today we have with us Mr. Sripal Jain, co-founder and chairman of Simandar Education, a certified CA and CPA. He has industry experience of over 7 years in audit, corporate finance, IFRS, GAAP. He has also given numerous talks covering topics of finance at corporations like Reliance Industries, Geo, DE Shaw, EY, AIG, Wells Fargo, etc. Sir was also awarded the Best Entrepreneur of Telangana State in 2018. And for the last 4 years, he has been working as a nursing instructor at Simandar Education, training candidates for CPA and CMA. So, on behalf of the entire batch, Sripal sir, I welcome you to IIM Ranchi. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Amir. So it's a big privilege to be talking to the IIM students. So first of all, thank you so much for being on time. I've seen people coming up before 5 o'clock also. So I think time management is a key in IIM, and that's what I'm noticing it practically actually. So first of all, thank you so much for coming in on time. Before wasting any time, I'll just go to my PPT, and I think Amir have already introduced me. Today's agenda is value investing. As you know, there is too many things on stock market, and I know a lot of the people are very much excited on stock market because there are a lot of theories, a lot of analysis and all. So I might have a different opinion from others, and whereas others might have a different opinion from me. So that's how it is when we are talking about value investing. We are talking about speculation, investing versus speculation, investing in crisis, and why everyone is not a value investor. What is an approach to value investing? What is a value trap? Valuation analysis. And so today the session is more on, I would say, stock market, more to do with not only with the value investing, but the overall economic conditions, how it is prevailing. So that's where we would be talking about today. So now, what is value investing? So if you see that value investing is a strategy where investors aim to buy stocks, bonds, real estate, or other assets. So what happens typically when we talk about value investing, we are only talking about shares, right? So here, when we are talking about, so we are covering about bonds, real estate, or any other asset for that matter, which is lesser than its value, right? So I would say it's a book value or intrinsic value. So once it falls below that, it becomes an attractive margin of safety point for an investor to invest in that particular shares. And it can be either shares, it can be bonds, it can be real estate, or it can be any other assets. So before I talk about value investing, so can anyone here tell me, because Amir, you can mute if any one of them would want to talk to. So can anyone tell me why is gold going up now in this market? So because we want to be very interactive rather than me talking, I would suggest that every participant also participate. You can also put it in the chat window if you have any of the answers. So my first question is, before I come into the value investing and before I understand about investing, why do you think so that gold is going up? So if you see the asset classes, so you're seeing the equity market going up, and there is a coronavirus, there is complete panic everywhere, and you're seeing that the asset classes have outperformed. So what could be one of the reasons? So Deepak is telling government has increased the import cost. Market is being volatile is what Anupam is telling. Yes, what about others? Gold is seen as a safe haven. So people are selling stocks and buying gold. So when people are selling stocks, you're seeing that Wall Street is already high. So I don't think so that people are selling stocks because stock market is also going up. So it was 7,500 and it went up again to 11,000 now. Less risky security. It is seen as a lender of last resort during economic uncertainties. Okay, what about others? Uncertainty in stock market. So I think there are different reasons for gold to outperform the market. The one major reason what we are seeing that is the continuous decline in dollar. So if you see that the US dollar have been on a decline like anything. So whenever a weakening dollar is there, because dollar is considered to be a safe haven among all the asset classes, dollar is the safest haven for investors. So when dollar typically goes down, you see that gold outperforms the market normally. So that's where a weakening dollar is a sign of a strong gold pricing. So that is how we would see. Now, why is the dollar weakening? See, why am I connecting everything with US stock market is because our Indian stock market anyways follows the US market, right? When you see SGX Nifty or any of the stock market indexes, they normally try to take the track from the other markets, right? So especially when you see about NASDAQ and Dow Jones and all. So we see that the dollar is weakening a lot, and the major reason is euro and other currencies are going up, and they are going up because the way they were fighting the viruses and all sort of thing, they expect that the economic recovery is faster in European countries. And that is one of the reason why we see euro and all growing stronger and dollar is weakening. Now, sir, when dollar is going down, why is that our Indian rupee is not depreciating, or rather appreciating, not depreciating? So typically when dollar weakens, your home currency should appreciate, right? When in fact all other currencies have appreciated. But if you see that INR have not appreciated, can you tell me the reason why? If you see the Indian rupee now, it is trading in a very narrow range of 73 to 75, right? So when you see dollar is weakening, all other currencies are growing stronger against dollar. It's except for INR, which is not, which has been a laggard. So what could be one of the reason because why INR is not participating in this? Why do you see that there is a weakening currency, or I mean a stronger currency? So RBI role in the forex market, yes, that could be one of the major reason, because primarily we are an export oriented country. The majority of them try to export, and exporters would always want the home currency to depreciate instead of appreciate. So depreciating currency is normally a favorable thing for an exporter, right? So if you have a 72 and if you have a 75, I will any day take 75. So that is one of the reason what we are seeing, that RBI's continuous role in buying the dollars from the open market and making the currency not grow up. So I would say not appreciate further. So that is the open market operations being carried out by RBI continuously to maintain the currency properly. So that could be one of the reason why we are seeing. And also depreciating currency typically allows foreign direct investment, a favorable FDI, right? Because you want your foreign direct investment to come up in the country, because we ourselves are running with our own economic struggle and we want foreign flows to come to our country. And that could be one of the reason RBI want to maintain a very depreciating currency from 73 to 75. They don't want the currency to appreciate further, right? So these are some of the reasons why we are seeing gold going up, INR appreciating, dollar going down. So all the currencies, commodity market are so connected with stock market, right? Because a commodity market will give you a clue where the equity market is heading to. And that's where we are seeing the interconnection between dollar, gold, and various things. Some of them can argue that gold is a safe haven because whenever there is a panic, people tend to invest in gold. But I would say the major reason for gold to outperform is the weakening currency. And that is where the gold is trying to outperform. And there is so much of free money being printed by Fed Reserve, which is nothing but RBI of US. So there's a lot of money supply in there, and lot of whenever there is a free printing of money, that money typically goes into the commodity market also. And that's where you see commodities outperforming, you see equity market outperforming. This is a magic of liquidity, right? So that is how I would say. So now coming to value investing, after knowing the entire stock market function with commodities and currency market, now we are talking about value investing. So where do we see value investing? If you see there, I have written Ben Graham was considered as a father of value investing, and one of his students was Warren Buffett. So typically I do prepare the PPT, but I hardly read it from the PPT. So please excuse me if I don't read it, whatever is there in the PPT, and try to make it more interesting because we both are having an interaction, right? And so one important thing what we see in value investing is what is the intrinsic value of the share. That's what you try to find out. And what is the market value there? So what is the value in the market for that share, and what is the intrinsic value of that share? Whatever is the difference is known as a value generator for you. In other words, they call it as margin of safety, and that's how it is. So there are a lot of models for it, right? So what is the approach to value investing? So you see that stock trading at a price of more than intrinsic value. So how do we get the intrinsic value? It is nothing but book value. So if I want to call it as in a simple form, any market price, if it is lesser than book value, makes it as an attractive value buy stock for us, right? So if you see, intrinsic value can be calculated using various models like dividend growth model and cash flow model. So there are a lot of models for it. And sometimes just for your easy understanding, so if it is book value is something which is known as the intrinsic value, right? And then if your market price is 100 and your intrinsic value is 90, that means there are good fundamentals which are supporting the stock, but the stock is not currently underpriced, or I would say overpriced, accordingly, and that is where you'll need to catch it up. In the first case, the stock is overpriced because the intrinsic value is 90 and in the market it is trading at 100. So currently the stock is 10 rupees overpriced, and the reasons might be the sentiments of the market and the price momentum which makes the stock overpriced. Eventually, typically a time comes when the market price and intrinsic value is leveled, and that's where you will get a chance to kind of sell off or buy. So that is how we will talk the approach to value investing. So why everyone is not a value investor, right? Because most of the traders are for short-term profit minded. They require discipline and patience, require a lot of reading, understanding of financials, misunderstanding between low price company stocks and poorly performing company stocks. We have a lot of case laws today, and I didn't want it to put just as a theory. We have a lot of case law study where we'll study individually a lot of stocks so that I can practically relate how the value investing is working, right? So value investment is not just investing in low PE ratio components. It is rather investing in a fundamentally good company which is trading at discount, right? So it is just not like, yes, okay, this stock is trading at a low PE or low price to book. Does it make a value buy? No, definitely it cannot be, right? Like Yes Bank, for an example, had a very low price to book value. Does it make Yes Bank as an attractive value buy at the time when it was going under a complete refinancing and even a reconstruction and all sort of things? And it was almost on the verge of bankruptcy, whereby SBI came into rescue, right? So that's what I would say, that even a low price to book will not make the stock attractive sometimes. So what is a value trap? So in the process of finding undervalued stocks, sometimes people might fall into the value trap. Stocks are not worth to buy simply because prices had fallen significantly. So it is very important for investors to look at the fundamentals of the stock, which are mainly driven by future potential business. So if I see Yes Bank, for an example, have been continuously falling since 3 years. If you have seen last 2 years, not 3 years, it have been continuously falling. A lot of the asset quality was deteriorating, and we saw the promoters and all taking up, going down. A lot of the asset qualities were not booked properly, and that's where we were seeing that Yes Bank was falling like anything. So people suggested to buy Yes Bank because it looks like a value buy, but it didn't turn out to be, and it actually went off to 6-7 rupees also when the news of SBI came in, and that's how the stock went up actually later, right? But it didn't went up at all, but it was just like a trigger, and again it have corrected back to 12 to 13 rupees, right? So value trap is typically the stock looks cheap when you buy it and then just stays at that level only. Over the time, the business earning deteriorates and PE stays low. So this is one of the value traps which you are having. So what are the traits of value trap stocks? Diminishing competitive advantages, lack of innovation, high debt, poor management, declining revenue growth and profitability. So these are some of the traits of value trap stocks. So how to pick up the best stocks? Are they having a good management? How good are they with capital allocation? Are they trustworthy, ethical? Are the trends in industry favorable? What are the industry dynamics? And what is the expertise about the company, right? So what do they specialize in? So that is one of the important factor to pick up the best stocks. Now, what are the valuation analysis? So you have various valuation models like dividend discount model, discounted cash flow model, residual income model, and asset-based model. And you have a relative valuation where you compare the PE ratio with other company and try to find the share whether it is underpriced or overpriced, right? So these are two methods. One is an absolute and one is a relative. So in valuation method, in dividend discount model, you see the history, the trend, how consistently the company is paying the dividends. And according to that, you put a formula of D1 by P naught plus G, which is a popular Gordon growth model, where you'll factor the growth and the dividends. And then you have the discounting cash flow model, where you calculate the true value of the company by discounting the future cash flows, which you might have got in the recent acquisition of Zomato and Uber Eats, right? So there was a recent valuation which happened on the cash flow models which they are having and on the basis of market share, right? And then you have a comparable model which compares the PE ratios to a benchmark to determine if the stock is undervalued or overvalued. So now how do we value a stock without dividend? Now, say a company which is not paying dividend at all. So how do we value that stock? So will it be P ratio, or will it be earning growth, or will it be book value? All the three methods are there to value a stock without dividends. Can you tell me any company in India which is not paying dividends but is valued at a very high price? Any examples? Any guesses, guys? A company which is not paying dividends at all and is valued at a very, very high price in the market. HUL, no, HUL pays dividend. It is not like HUL doesn't pay dividend. TCS also pays dividend. Yes, what about others? MRF, kind of. Infosys definitely pays dividend. DMart pays dividend. Every company pays dividend, right? I mean, you invest in a company for getting dividends, right? If they're not paying dividends to you, then what are they doing? And this company which we are talking about have not paid dividends almost since like what, 25 to 30 years. So 3M India, did you hear any time about 3M India? So that's the company which is there valued at almost 18,000 rupees per share, right? Have not paid dividends at all, and is being valued at almost price to book of 10 to 12 times. The book value is almost at around 1500, and the stock price is trading at around 18,000 to 19,000, and they haven't paid a dividend at all. So 3M India, the beauty of 3M India is they always reinvest. Their return on equity is higher. So normally when your return on equity is higher, typically equity shareholders don't complain much because they are getting stock price appreciation. So if you're not getting dividends, either you get the appreciation in share price. So that also is considered to be a return for you, right? So that is how in 3M India it works. So they have almost, whenever their profits are increasing, their profits have been reinvested again in the business itself. Rather than getting distributed as a dividend to outsiders, the profits have been repatriated into the business itself. So they are one of the example where the dividends have not been paid at all. So dividend yield, when you take it out about the stock, they have not paid a dividend at all in their entire operation since last 25 to 30 years. And the stock is trading at a very healthy premium to the book value. So that can be some of the reasons how it is, right? So book value, again, every company has assets and liabilities, which can be summed up by giving the book value of the company. So what is a book value? So book value is nothing but your total assets minus your outside liabilities divided by number of shares will give me the book value per share. So book value is nothing but this is a true value of your company. So even if tomorrow companies go down anything or anything happens, at least that much money to you should be getting up. So if you see that the book value of P&G, Procter and Gamble Hygiene, Jitin have given is 350 and the stock price is 10,000. So do you consider 350 to be a fair price for P&G then? Definitely not, because that is a book value. Now, why is Procter and Gamble trading at a very high premium? So typically the book value is 350 and the stock is trading almost 35 to 40 times, right, of the book value, because they see. What do you think, guys? Before me telling this answer, why do you think that a 350 rupees of book value of P&G stock is trading at 10,000? What do you think should be the reason for that? Yes, what should be the reason for a 350 rupees stock, which is a book value of the company, your total assets minus your outside liabilities, what you have recorded in the balance sheet value, is now traded in the outside market at 10,000. So what could be the reason for investors paying so much greater than the book value? Yes, confidence in the company, greater future prospects. Yes, next, market demand is higher. Please understand, all the FMCG companies, for that matter, the growth is a very important factor. So if you have a strong future prospects, or if you have a strong growth in the market, right, there is a promising returns. Now, high CAGR, and I would say Tesla. For that example, Tesla was $200 to $300. Now Tesla is trading at almost $2,000. Now it have corrected again and it is going down every day in US markets. But if you see Tesla, Apple and all, they have given, the stocks are trading at a very premium valuations because investors expect that the growth history is very good. Tesla is talking about rockets and all sort of launching, right? So they are talking about very great technologies in their car. They have implemented a driverless car. So a lot of the technology is giving a promise to the shareholders to make 10 times, 12 times, sometimes 100 times, sometimes 1,000 times also. And Tesla have been one of the example, right? So where your book value might be different, but your market value might be crazy. It is all almost 100, 200 times. So that's what it happens when your growth prospect is very huge. Your book value and your fair market value deviate a lot. I hope that clarifies, Jatin. So that's how valuing a stock without dividend. These are the three models: P ratio, earning growth, and book value. Now, sir, tell me, I mean, so many IPOs you might have seen, the latest IPOs which have come, guys. Can you tell me any latest IPOs which have come? We have seen 2, 3 IPOs coming up: Chemcon, UTI, right? And Mazagon, Happiest Minds, Angel Broking. So, I mean, I don't understand what JP Morgan or Morgan Stanley is doing. I hope this is recorded and all, and I hope this is not used for a negative thing. I don't know what is JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley is doing, because they are valuing a stock. But if you see the listing gains, they are almost 200%, 300% they are being listed. So I don't know what valuations are being carried out and how our investment banks are valuing these stocks also. Because it's a big insult to the investment bankers, because they are valuing Happiest Minds IPO at this price. And when you go into the IPO, you see that it is being, listed almost by 100%, 200% is the IPO listing price. When it goes up by 100, 200%, that's a kind of insult to your investment banking on how they are valuing the stock itself, right? So I don't know, this is one of the contention when we see in the newer IPOs which are coming up. This can normally happen because of the strong liquidity which is there in the market, which I was talking about when I started the presentation, where I was telling you that there is a huge liquidity in the market. Federal Reserve, which is the US RBI, have been printing money like anything. That money is typically being pushed into the emerging markets. And that's where you are seeing that so much liquidity is driving the stock markets now. If you see the stock market in March, and if you see in October, the stock prices have almost gone up like anything from their March lows. So can we tell that that was a value investing time, sir? 110% that was a value investing time. Can you tell me, anyone, any guesses what Tata Motors price was when coronavirus pandemic came up in the month of March, when the COVID pandemic, which have come into, and there was a huge, panic in the market, and you see Tata Motors going down. Can anyone guess me what price Tata Motors was that time? Around 70. What is the Tata Motors price now? So some of them are telling 65, 60. What is the current price of Tata Motors? It's almost to 133. I mean, this is a classical example of value investing, because value investing works very well in bear market. It doesn't work good in bull market, right? Because in bull market, you can't even trust the stocks, because every stock is going up and one stock is not participating. That means you might have a doubt in that value itself, because every stock is going up in the bull market and that one stock is not going up. So how do I tell that that's a value pick? For me, value pick have been Tata Motors in the pandemic, right? Because it was 60, 65. It was falling as if no one will drive the vehicles. It's a short-term phenomenon, but the strong fundamentals of the companies, that's where you see the turnaround in the stocks. They happen. That is a value buy. Second value buy would have been Sun Pharma. All the pharma companies were also going down in the pandemic. So normally when the bear market happens and when the hammering happens across all the way, and I would say bloodbath happens, so every stock falls without any logic, right? So pharma stocks were also falling without any logic. Divi's Laboratories, you had Sun Pharma, you had so many stocks, Dr. Reddy's Labs, all the pharma stocks were also underperforming, where I think the growth history of pharma, so I mean in the entire market, the only sector which is growing up is what, guys? Pharma sector, right? Everyone needs medicines now because of the pandemic. Now the only sector which I was bullish on 6 months back is pharma sector. And I have invested a huge money in pharma when I was there in the month of March, April, because I thought this is something which would definitely unlock the value for us. And you see all the pharma stocks from March to October have actually went up like anything, especially Glenmark. You see Sun Pharma. Sun Pharma haven't participated that much while comparing to Divi's and other stocks, right? But in terms of other companies, Dr. Reddy's have outperformed the market like anything, right? You had Cipla from 400, it went to 840. Don't you think this is a classical value unlocking? We'll say Dr. Lal Pathlabs is what they're telling. But the problem with India is most of the people are so, they're panicking whenever the market goes down. They think, okay, let's put up in gold. Let's put up here. We are always accustomed to put our money into fixed deposits or money into gold, right? But if you see that Right now, the fixed deposit interest rate, what is the interest rate in India, guys, currently? Now, I will tell you why is it's a classical time. So 5.25%, if I take out the taxation benefit also, you're getting 4%. I mean, what the hell is that? And when I talk about savings bank interest rate, it is coming somewhere to 2.5 to 3%. If I talk about real interest rate, then we are talking about 1% or 2% because inflation itself, what is the inflation rate, guys? Inflation is itself is a 6%. So real terms, you're not earning anything right now, right, on your fixed deposits or anything. So, sir, are you pushing us to invest in stock market? Definitely no. My answer is not like I'm pushing into, but definitely I would like you to see this aspect of growing into, because we as an Indian people are very much accustomed to investing in gold, investing in fixed deposits. I mean, tell me how many people have invested in bond market? How many of them understand bond market? We hardly see bond market participation. In US, the entire bond markets will predict your entire equity market. If you see the yield curves of bonds, you have seen, did you hear anything about any time about inverted yield curves? The inversion happens in the yield curves. Anyone here inverted yield curve? That inversion happened in August 2019. And whenever the yield curves invert, they tell that there is a definitely there is a recession coming up. You saw the yield curves inverting in August, and as per that theory, exactly after 6-7 months recession come. And you see there after August and then again November, the yields got inverted. So what do you mean by inverted yield curves? So the yields invert when your short-term rates are higher than the long-term rates. Now, why does a short-term rates goes up? Typically, when you're investing in a long-term security, you will expect a high return or a lesser return, guys. If you're investing for a long term, do you expect a higher return or a lower return? You expect a higher return, right? But in fact, in August and in November, your long-term interest rates were lesser and your short-term interest rates were higher. Now, why did it happen? Because people were investing in long-term period because they were expecting that something wrong might happen because market is a bubble. Everyone was investing in long-term, right? And no one was investing in short-term. So what Federal Reserve did was, in order to encourage people to invest in short-term securities, they increased the interest rate of short-term securities. By doing so, to encourage demand, to make people to invest in short-term securities, they increase the interest rates like anything. That was a classical example when your short-term interest rates were higher than the long-term interest rate and the yields got inverted. Normally the yield goes up and that time it rather inverted. And that's where people predicted that everyone is going into long-term. No one is going into short-term, and Federal Reserve is so desperate to reduce the rates, I mean to increase the rates, right? So that was an indication that where the stock market was heading into. And that's how you need to understand the bond market properly. I think that's where in India, we don't see bond market participation so much. We haven't understood the bond market much. And that's where we see that we should go beyond the stock, beyond the FDs, beyond the gold, beyond the silver. We should definitely put some amount into the stock market also, right? Coming back, so these are some value investment examples, and the biggest example was in the month of March only. Now, what is the difference between investing and speculation? Now, if you see that investing and speculation, guys, what do you think? What do you mean by speculation? What is for you is speculation? So speculation is like you're speculating whether the stock price will go up or go down. And that's how it happened in oil prices, where the speculation happened to such an extent that that oil prices became negative. Like couple of months back, 2-3 months back, we had oil prices becoming negative. That means for storage cost, the manufacturers or the people who were storing the oil, right, they were paying more for that, for just for storing oil, right? So oil prices became negative, and that is one of the example in terms of speculation. So what you want to become, I will leave up to you. But for a typically to get a good return in the stock market, we normally recommend that you should be an investor more and speculator less, because in speculation, only the informed people can make right decisions and get good money. So we are talking about technical charts. There is so much about moving average. In IMs, we have been taught about this, that, and all. But see, in the COVID time, see, when there is any panic in the markets, when India-China war is coming up, Pakistan war, your charts, your everything will go for a toss, right? So sometimes I would suggest that a value investing is greater strategy than these chart-based or the trading-based strategy. Because if you want to become a trader, then you need to spend entire time on that. You cannot be a trader and you can work in a company. You can't do two things. When you are a trader or when you're a speculator, you need to invest entire time into it. And I see that I want to sleep peacefully, so I will not buy Vodafone shares, right? Because though that share was trading at 4 rupees and now it have gone up to 12 rupees, right? Based on some speculation and rumors, but at the end of the day, I need a sound sleep. So when I sleep, I don't want that I get disturbed, right? So in speculation, normally you don't have the peace of mind, but in investment, once you have understood properly the market or understood properly the stock, right? So you normally live very peacefully. That is what I would say in a, I mean, you can tell that as a something as a piece of advice for investors and speculators. So normally, if you see that the risk is more, the attitude is very conservatism of investment, because we typically look that our investment should normally beat the FD rate. Why do you invest in FD? Because you think that at least we'll get 5%, 6% of interest rather than keeping that money idle. So as an investor, I would expect that at least 5% to 6% I should get as a return, right, on an FD. And in stock market, I would expect minimum 8 to 10%. So that's how I will invest in the stock market, and I will select stocks which have a very good dividend yield, right? So there are a lot of things where we'll come into the case laws, which I'll be talking about as and when we are taking up. And then you have in speculation, futures, options, you have Bitcoin. If you see Bitcoin, it was speculated so much, it went into $14,000 to $15,000. And now today, if you see the Bitcoin price, it is not even, I would say $4,000 to $5,000. So that's how speculation happens. It can go up faster and then it can go down also very faster, right? So stability is always missing in speculations. But sometimes, sir, then why is futures option introduced? Why is that then these options have been introduced? Can you tell me that futures and options sometimes can be a very good point for you also? What can be that case, guys, where you can use futures and options for your benefit? How do you think so? Hedging, yes, hedging is one of that thing. So sir, can we tell that futures and options were brought into stock market not for your speculation? It was bought into the market for companies to hedge their losses, right? So they used to buy cash stocks and they used to hedge the index futures. They used to hedge their particular things. But the problem with retailers is they are trading in futures and options itself and losing a lot of money. Typically, these instruments were bought into for hedging, and they are used by all institutional investors, like foreign institutional investors and domestic institutional investors. Can you give me some examples of who all are DIIs in the market today? Guys, who all are stock market favorites who have joined today's session? Who all are our DIIs of India, domestic institutional investors? Yes, any examples of DIIs? Yes, who all are DIIs in stock market, domestic institutional investors? Any example of domestic institutional investors? Yes, anyone? LIC, yes, the biggest one, LIC, UTI. These are our institutional investors. So they come in and they buy huge. So market is dictated by domestic institutional investors and foreign institutional investors, the FIIs and the DIIs, and they are the one who dictate the market, right? So they are the one who use futures, options and all for hedging and all. So that's how the primary intention was to bring these particular things, right? So if you see that, normally what happens, people tend to gamble, and that share only they typically use it for, and that only they convert it into long term. So normally so in India, the definition of long-term investment is people buy for a short term and then they convert into long term if they are getting losses. Very bad strategy, guys. I don't think so. You have considered that share for buying today, selling Vodafone after 5-6 days, and tomorrow if Vodafone doesn't go up, then you become a long-term investor. That is not known as long-term investing. That is like gambling. That is like playing around with the stocks. That is not called as investing. So investing is dealt with lot of knowledge, right? So there are certain, so I have already spoken about investing in crisis. When coronavirus came into, that was a very good strategy of putting your money into the system. So you had so many stocks that time, Tata Motors, HDFC, Asian Paints, you had Reliance. See, Reliance stock price, it was 900, 850, and now Reliance is trading at 2,500, right? So, I mean, 2,250 to 2,300. So that's how the stock prices have gone up significantly. So normally value investing works very good when it is in the crisis time or when it is a bear market. In bull market, value buying doesn't go up properly, right? So what are the case studies? Now coming to HUL. Now today, I think this is one of the best part what we have. So HUL guys, so now why should you invest in HUL guys? What do you think? Now I have given you one example of Hindustan Unilever, right? Tell me 5 reasons why you should invest in Hindustan Unilever. Roma says first is it's an FMCG. Okay, next. Yes, guys. Why do you think so? I want 5 reasons. Companies virtually debt free. Okay, no theoretical, Anuj, no strong fundamentals and all. I want the reasons. Yes, it is a strong fundamental, but what is that strong fundamental in it? Right? That is what we have come here to understand. It's a strong, it has an above industry CAGR, that is fine. Company has a good return on equity, 83.44%. Negative working capital, hence good management. Okay, next. Demand for the product is constantly increasing. Okay, next. Dividend payout of 80.45%. See, dividend payout of 80.45%, but if you see the dividend yield, it is not even 1% in Hindustan Unilever. So that cannot be called as a dividend paying stock for me. Dividend paying stock for me would be Coal India, right? Did you know, guys, Coal India pays a huge dividend. So I can invest only in Coal India. 117 rupees Coal India is trading. Only for dividends I can invest in Coal India. It's a virtually debt-free company and they pay a huge dividend because government is the biggest shareholder in that. So typically when the government right now is going into a fiscal deficit, so you are expected that government companies will end up making a lot of dividend payout, right? So I think, Jatin, dividend payout might not be a good reason. Relatively moderate risk, market leader can be definitely one. Please see what are the latest things. So when you're researching a stock for a value investing, so the first thing what I was looking for is whether what is the price to earning ratio. When I see HUL price to earning ratio is 70 times, so they are paying it for their growth. So if you remember, if you know, guys, GSK, which is GlaxoSmith, said they acquired GlaxoSmith Consumer Care, the Horlicks, Boost is GSK's business, right? GSK's. So they have acquired Horlicks, Boost, and they have also acquired Glenmark's V-Wash, right, which is for the female hygiene product. So they have acquired recently, they have done that. So these are a lot of the products which they are going into, right? And after the Boost and Horlicks thing, the product portfolio of HUL have gone up very stronger, right? So that is a history of Hindustan Unilever. If you see the GSK actually has sold off entire stake in HUL now. Previously, they have given, as per the deal of GSK and HUL, there was a deal that 7% stake they will be given in HUL. Now, why did HUL do a deal? Please understand that valuation was 6 times of sales, guys. Now, this is a huge valuation. So GSK sold their Boost and Horlicks business sales 6 times their valuation to HUL. I mean, if you see the same parameter of, I would say, Complan, right? Hints India sold it at 4 times of sales, right? Complan, Glucon-D and all. So that was sold into Hints India and that was valued at 4 times of sales. And they have sold almost 6 times of sales. I mean, that's a very much expensive deal. Yes, Zydus Wellness, that was a company which has sold into. So if you see that valuation that time was 4 times and HUL have done it at 6 times. Now, why did HUL do that, guys? Anyways, they are not paying in cash. Their entire thing is their share price, right? So they have done a share value deal. They have given a 5% stake, almost closer to 7.5% stake to GSK. And now recently, like a couple of months back, GSK sold off their entire stake in HUL, right? So now typically, so HUL, entire Horlicks and all the businesses, all the products of HUL are coming into now HUL is. And one more thing, guys, the rural demand is picking up like anything. Today, I see farmers are taking up new two-wheeler businesses, two-wheelers and all. The rural growth have gone up like anything in COVID time because our FMCG is outperforming like anything. The necessities requirement have gone up. So the rural demand is up like anything. And that's where HUL is also having a strong distribution network also, right? So that's where HUL is a strong pick. But right now, sir, is it a value buy, guys? What do you think? Is it a value buy now, HUL? because our session is more on value investing. Now tell me, is HUL presents a classical case of value investing? Roma says yes. What about others, guys? Is HUL a value buy? Anika tells no. Deepak tells yes. What about others? No, sir, it might be overvalued. No, I would suggest that it's not a value buy because it would have been value buy during the COVID time when it fell down to 1500 levels. That was a time when you should have invested in Hindustan Unilever stock. Now it is at 2100 and 2200. It is not a value investing. That is known as growth investing. Now you are investing not for valuation, you are investing for growth because it is already so much high than its book value. So it doesn't present a case for my value investing. So can I tell, sir, if my PE is lesser, that is a value investing? Yes. If my price to book is lesser, that is also lesser than the peers, then it can be an attractive value buy. Because tomorrow anything happens, that company will at least pay me the book value, right? So that's where HUL cannot be a value buy for me right now, right? Just because I have kept in the case study doesn't mean that HUL is a value investing. For me currently, HUL cannot be a value buy. It can be a growth investing buy because we are betting on the growth. We are not betting on the valuation. Is it clear? Do you understand the subtle difference, guys, between growth investing and value investing? Right? So HUL is a concept of growth investing. You're betting on the rural growth, rural demand. Now, Asian Paints, guys, second stock. What do you think about Asian Paints? What are the 5 reasons why should I invest in Asian Paints, guys? Yes, strong market share. Sakshi is telling definitely yes. That's a first factor in Asian Paints. Second, guys, what do you think so in Asian Paints? What could be the second reason in Asian Paints? Yes, we see so many Asian Paints advertisement, right? Any reasons, guys, to buy Asian Paints? Guys, these all companies will come into your campuses and offer also. So it's very important that you study the business of the company. Don't you think so? I think these are the companies who normally come up, right? So growth potential, larger P ratio of 65. Okay, improvement in operating margin, continuously growing and performing well. Okay, growth potential is there. What about others? I see only 4-5 people. I see 61 people there. 3 years return on equity is 26.39%. Virtual debt-free company. No interest payment, nothing. Okay, what about others? Global presence. Guys, these are the financial factors. What are the business factors, guys? Because every one of them is telling me financial factors. Don't you think a finance guy should know more about the business? That's where he can invest. That's where you can drive the value for the business, right? Brand value. Now, this is a very, very significant term which have been talked about by Roma Singla. If you see, guys, in 1950s time, paint business was there. After independence and after World War, the painting business went up like anything. That time we had Shalimar Paints. If I remember, that was Shalimar Paints or someone. And there were hardly any painting company. What we used to do beside our house, any painter is there, it was an unorganized sector where we used to get it from someone, a painter who used to come and paint your house. Yes or no? So now what Asian Paints did that time, at that time, guys, I'm telling that they have derived 23 to 24 crores of revenue. That time they clocked it. In 1960s to 1970s time, I'm talking about, right? So they came in as a brand valuer. They differentiated the paint with their good quality and they actually became a differentiator in the paints. So people used to tell paint mein Asian Paints is of the best quality, right? So they actually differentiated their product with their brand valuation. So that time, whenever now, what is happening, guys, this is so very important now in the COVID time in rural areas. And right now, Asian Paints is focusing their entire strategy entirely into housing sector. Because decorative paints, if you would have heard about decorative paints, are typically used for housing sectors and all, and where government is coming up with schemes with housing for all. So Asian Paints can be a biggest beneficiary because they requires a painting and all, and they are coming with a full-fledged solution, right? To drive in for the entire paints, which places, where, in which room, what color paint I should use. That is how Asian Paints have come. So now in rural areas also, due to their differentiation, due to their brand name, they have actually driven a good factor of brand, right? So they spoke about a lot about Asian Paints, lot of advertising. They have a huge distribution network. To be honest, guys, Asian Paints doesn't have any wholesalers nor any retailers. It is all distributors. It all comes into, they have a huge distribution networks across all the countries. Transportation cost is saved around like anything. So Asian Paints is a classical case of having a huge market CAGR. If you see 10 years, they have been doing almost 22 to 23%. They are almost enjoying like a monopoly. Berger Paints is second one. He's having a PE of 63 to 64. And Asian Paints is somewhere little costlier, expensive in terms of their PE valuation. Now, when I am talking about Asian Paints as an analysis, what are the two factors? One is the sales. So sales can be drawn into by decorative paints. So housing sector is booming like anything. And second is the industrial paints. Like industrial sector is what? Automobile. So automobile sector is going up, right? The demand is again going up due to the autos. And now people are wanting their own two-wheelers and four-wheelers, guys. Because of Uber, Ola and all, they don't want, due to the COVID thing, they want their own vehicles now. So the demand for the automobile sector is increasing. That will automatically lead to demand for the paint. So that is a revenue driver. What is a cost driver for Asian Paints? How is paint made into, guys? If you see Asian Paints, their entire 50% of their cost is on raw materials, right? So how is paint made? What is a major raw material used in manufacturing paints, guys? Crude oil. And crude oil was down like anything. If your input cost is lesser, you can drive more margins. And if you see in the COVID time, Asian Paints had hardly done any advertising also. For that matter, Colgate, HUL, their advertising cost was nothing because everyone wanted necessaries. So they didn't do any advertising cost and their margins went up like anything, right? So crude oil going down, and you see Asian Paints again becoming a value investing at the time of COVID time. Now, is it a case of value investing? Yes or no, guys? Right now, is Asian Paints a value investing? What do you think, guys? At 2,200 now, is it a classical case of value investing or no? My answer is still no, guys. Because again, I'm telling you, value investing, it would have been when it was trading at 1,500 to 1,600. That's what I'm telling. At the time of 1,600, when it was falling down like anything, without any reasons, it had fallen down, right? And it went almost closer to the book values and all, very closer to the 10 times, 8 times book values. So value investing for me is my book value and how many times of book value I'm paying. So that, and your return on equity and return on capital employed is anyways higher. Then why did the share price fell to 1,500 to 1,600? That presents a case for me to invest in that stock, right? Right now at 2,100, Asian Paints presents me a growth story. What is a growth story, guys? They are focusing more on housing related sectors. They are more on decorative paints. They are completely focused on entire housing sector as such. Third example, I hope, Amir, I'm not taking much time, and I hope everyone is following it and all, and they're not, because I'm surpassing the time. It was like 40 minutes being set out. And so still I have some portion of time. So Amir, that is fine, right? If I just surpass the time by additional 10 minutes to 15 minutes.
Oh, yes, sir. It's fine. It's fine. So no issues.
Okay. Reliance Industries, guys. What are the top reasons to invest in Reliance? And does it present a value case scenario right now? Yes. What about Reliance Industry? What are 5 reasons to invest in Reliance? Diversifying, debt-free. It is not debt-free, guys. Reliance is not debt-free. It is net debt-free. What do you mean by debt-free and net debt-free? They have debt in their balance sheet, but their cash is more than their debt, right? So Reliance is net debt-free. It is not debt-free. Mergers and acquisition, attractive, huge investment. So yes, okay, next. Next, what is Reliance? Market domination in every sector. Behaving ethically. Arpita, I mean, I can have different answers for ethics. So I don't want to tell anything on the behavioral patterns, but yes, regular deals. See, regular deals doesn't mean, don't you think so? Reliance nahi bola hoga Silver Lake ko, please come and invest in Reliance Retail and make the valuation go up so that others also invest, right? Can I do that or not? Considering Reliance is so close to government and a lot of these things, right? So I would say the biggest positive for Reliance Industries was their value unlocking, and they have completely become a debt free. When you are becoming a net debt free, your PE multiple will go up. right? You command a higher share price because your interest cost is zero now in your PNL, right? So your interest coverage ratios improve, your price to earning valuation also go up significantly. And now uh, uh, Reliance is not considered as a telecom leader anymore. Reliance is being considered as a technology share now. The moment that happens, guys, sky is the limit. As you might have seen in Tesla, in Apple and all, the moment they consider Reliance as a technology stock, then the valuations can go up like anything. So that's again a classical value investing, a classical growth investing strategy of Reliance Industries. Is it a value pick? Definitely no, because it was a 900,000, it was a value pick. Now at 2,200, 2,300 pricing, Reliance Industries is now dependent on completely on the growth investing. Now that you have invested, now investors are more focused on exit strategy. Investment to sab kar liye, right? Now what is exit strategy, at what price they will exit is very important for them. So Reliance Industries now need to prove that by growing nicely. So already they are doing a value unlocking in retail. They have gone into the rural sector, guys, and they are connecting farmers with Facebook and villagers. They are bringing Facebooks and all. That's how Facebook and Google and all have come into. And their biggest positive is their telecom connection, which Amazon is not able to compete into, because Amazon doesn't enjoy data connectivity like Reliance has. Now, why can't Sir Amazon tie up hands with Bharti Airtel? Unfortunately, Bharti Airtel has so many things to do. They go into South Africa, invest something, come back here. So Bharti Airtel is a different piece altogether, right? So it is not in the future is Amazon shaking hands with Reliance, and that is the only way they can survive. Else they will be out from this sector, whatever be the cash, because Reliance is currently becoming the king in each and every sector, right? Now, next comes HDFC Bank, guys. What do you think about banking sector now? What about HDFC Bank, guys? What are the top reasons to invest in HDFC Bank? Outperformer of Bank Nifty and build moats. Third largest market cap stock, okay? Next, what about HDFC Bank, guys? Yes, HDFC lowest NPAs, very, very good asset quality have improved significantly. Even in the COVID time, they have declared a very, very good results. Their CAGR again have been consistent throughout, right? For HDFC Bank, 15%, if you see there, 15.57%, lowest NPAs. Next, what about HDFC, guys? I thought banking knowledge, everyone would have better customer service. So innovation is the driver for HDFC. Next, I was expecting one very solid reason for HDFC Bank, right? I'm not getting that. And I want a lot of them to participate so that you understand and you learn it. This is nothing but learning the stock market, guys. Today's session, good corporate governance, focused retail lending, strong cash flow position. I would say HDFC Financial is a complete leader in rural areas. In rural banking sector, HDFC have outperformed. Second biggest reason I would say is World Bank lending at 2%, 3%, right? They lend only to HDFC because World Bank have in every country a certain percentage towards housing development finance. And IDFC and HDFC have been the biggest beneficiaries of lowest rates, right? And third important thing, if you see NSE, BSE, their entire escrow accounts are also in HDFC, right? So even I talk about, when I talk about to my friends and all, they always tell, "Arey yaar, ICICI chore hai," right? They don't give loan, they'll give loan aggressively. They do this, their interest rate are this, right? This bank is very aggressive. But HDFC have been very conservatism. They don't give loans so easily. They are very conservative in nature. And that's where HDFC kind of become the leader in the banking industry. Both HDFC and HDFC Bank again presents a growth investing strategy than value investing. They were a very good value picks in COVID time. Now also I feel at 1,000 rupees HDFC Bank looks to be attractive value buying stock, because I see a strong demand in rural areas. Yes, there have been a moratorium, interest on interest, Supreme Court judgment is pending. There are a lot of stuff which banking sector is doing. But guys, in value investing, as I said you, these are all temporary phenomenons, right? Once after 1 year, 2 year, when economy goes up, these are the leaders which will go up like anything. And I would say Bank Nifty is the value pick in currently in the index, because all the banks have been underperformers in the entire rally of Nifty. Okay, the last one is Infosys, guys. In my case study, What about Infosys, guys? Infi. What are the 5 reasons for Infosys to invest? Tech stock doesn't mean that it's a tech stock I should invest. You should have a growth potential also. Yes, next. Tech stock, growth potential, move towards cloud. Okay. So they are going more towards digital because everything is going digital and IT stocks are all adopting to digital more, right? Reputation, good corporate governance. I would tell you guys, Infosys was the first company which I bought ESOPs. Narayan Murthy was the first one who bought employee stock option plans in India. And they are the first company which declare their results always. Now they are not doing it. But in the stock market, they're the first one who come up with results. So they enjoy a very strong corporate governance, right? Reputation, corporate governance is very strong, stable performance throughout. Do you think, guys, in Infosys, the entire lifespan of Infosys, last 2-3 years, where did you see a value buy in Infosys? Can anyone tell me one value buy have come? 2 times the value buy have come. One of the COVID time. Second major reason, if someone is tracking Infosys, whistleblowing case, yes, guys. And even in HDFC Bank, you see a lot of the US cases keeps coming up. Some sanction, this sanction, that sanction, all short-term phenomena where stock goes down. That is a value pick for you, right? Whistleblowing case where they said the promoters are not, the CEO is not good and all, right? And it went to Nandan Nilekani and everyone, to the management and all. Then you have seen Vishal Sikka when he left Infosys. That time also Infi stock fell down like anything, right? So that was also value pick. And same happened in Jubilant and all. So wherever when their promoters are going, goes off, or where the major CEO resigns and all, that are all upon organization stability issues. But overall, the balance sheet of Infi is very strong. It's a debt-free company, right? Have a good dividend payout, strong cash company, and having a huge revenue of $8-10 billion revenue company, right? They are winning a lot of large deals, and that's where Infosys also becomes an attractive growth case, not value case. Value buying, it would have been, had it been in the COVID time, you would have picked up Infosys share at 520, 530. Now Infosys is trading at 1,000 rupees, right? So that is a classical value unlocking happening in all these shares, right? So that are some of the things which I've given. So basis of valuation, if you see right now, if I see that SBI, price to book ratio of SBI is lesser than 1. Can you believe? It is 0.8. A bank like SBI is being valued lesser than the book value. I cannot believe that. And SBI for me in this session of today in value investing is my value pick stock in Bank Nifty, because SBI trading at a price book ratio of 0.63 is unbelievable for me, because a bank like SBI, which has sovereign guarantee, where government itself is, anything happens to the state bank, the government itself will come and protect. Thereby, if it is trading lesser than the book value, then it presents me a classical case of value buying. Your book value is 240 of SBI and it is trading at 192. So then it presents me a good case of price to book. So, sir, what could be one of the reason why it is trading at lesser than 1? It could be the NPS which the investors are anticipating because of the COVID time. They think that SBI will keep distributing money to government, right? So SBI actually works like an agent for government. Every now and then it comes to rescue of Yes Bank. It gives VRS schemes, retirement schemes, they distribute money. So that time normally the share value goes down, but that creates an automatic, see SBI by default, guys, all the banking stocks, they have earned a huge money on the mobile business itself. The SMSs which you get from banks, right? So every day which you get an SMS of, every month they leave it 10 rupees to 20 rupees for SMSs per customer. If I take 10 crores, 20 crores customers, for a quarterly revenue of bank is huge actually in that way, right? So they have insurance business, and they have so many things. You see SBI Life coming up, right? There are so many products of SBI, and even in retail SBI is very strong. So in that way, I would say SBI is a classical example in our value investing presentation today. The stock is completely undervalued and could present a classical case of value unlocking. It have went to 240 2 weeks back, from 160 to 240. Again in 2 weeks, it came back to 190, and I won't be surprised. Again, the stock might go up to 240 to 250. typically price to book ratio is the ratio which we see in banking sector. And Kotak Mahindra enjoys the highest price to book ratio apart from HDFC Bank, right? Kotak has a very, very strong, I would say, balance sheet. They have a huge brand name, and they are the most conservatism bank in among all the banks. Even HDFC is nothing in front of Kotak. That's where if you see the return on equity of Kotak Bank and the return on equity on HDFC Bank, they are very much closer, Kotak and HDFC, and that's where the price to book ratio is 4 times, 3 times. And for SBI, like a bank where it's very huge, it's the biggest bank today, and trading at a lesser than 1 raises some questions actually on the valuation front, right? Then again, we have FMCG sector, as I've already discussed about HUL and Britannia. Real estate sector, DLF, already you see the debt coverage ratio is lesser than 1, right? Normally a debt coverage ratio more than 1 indicates that there will be enough net income. But in DLF cases, the debt coverage ratio is lesser. So these are some of the ratios which we use in Pharma, Cipla and Sun Pharma, right? So if you see, Sun Pharma haven't participated among all the pharma stock. The major reason I feel for Sun Pharma has been their specialty products, right? So that is now going up. The specialty drugs which were there, they had some cases and all, which they have settled into last quarter. They declared some impairment loss, and the stock, people didn't understood Sun Pharma results itself. They said that Sun Pharma have declared loss, and the stock, everyone tried to sell Sun Pharma in that quarter. And you know what? It went up 6% up on that particular day, because I would say the impairment loss is a non-cash loss, right? So people thought that, the investors thought that this is a one-time loss and the stock should go up, right? And that's where within seconds, Sun Pharma stock on the result day, last quarter, went up almost 5% up in spite of losses in the company. Because what investors think is, this quarter they had a loss, next quarter they might have profits, and return on equity might be going up in that case, and would present a case for Sun Pharma. Alternatives to value investing might be growth investing. And as I've already discussed about growth investing in Asian Paints, in HUL and all, but guys, you cannot be dependent on growth investing always, right? If you would have seen in COVID thing, so if your COVID itself damages your business, your growth goes out for a toss. If tomorrow we see Donald Trump telling us, we saw IT story as the biggest growth business at the time of 2002 to 2007. People used to tell IT companies will grow at a percentage of 20%, 25%. Now you see that immigration, tougher H1 visa rules, and your IT companies are not performing at all. They are growing at a rate of 9% to 10%. Even in the campuses, we see most of the companies who come up in the campuses are also all companies who are more into digital, who are more into a very stable businesses and all. And that's where we see that the hiring trends are more there, right? And I'd be very happy now, considering that India is inviting a lot of FDIs. You see a lot of the companies, Amazon have, they are rapidly expanding. Apple have got up their manufacturing center in Chennai. You see a lot of the foreign companies opening up here. And that's where I would say my next slide would be on careers in finance. So I have only 5 minutes because I've already ran out of time. Because if someone asks me an IIM guy, because I'm not an IIM grad, right? But yes, we do give a lot of the trainings along with Becker, which is the global education provider, and having drawn $3.5 billion in revenue. So we are their own franchise partner in India, and we operate as in Becker. So we provide certifications like US CPA, US CMA, and all sort of stuff. So these are certain certifications. But for an IIM guy, I would say a CFA or a blockchain course, a course on technology, I think you guys should do. Because all the finance, what we are seeing up is more on tech front, right? So they are seeking, all the recruiters and all, especially from finance students, because my presentation is more on finance. So even if there are non-finance people today in this session, I would strongly suggest that please go in for blockchain, go in for artificial intelligence, data analytics. These are the 3 hot currently courses which are going up apart from CFA, because I see a lot of the IIM guys doing CFA course, right? So because CFA typically, why we are seeing up is, if you see JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley guys, we are seeing a lot of the investment banks are hiring more. What is this, sir? During COVID time, we thought that investment bank won't hire. then how are you telling us that investment banks are hiring a lot? Because if you see, there is a lot of free money going out in the system. So all the smaller banks are parking their funds with larger banks, right? So JP Morgan results, if you see, Morgan Stanley results, you see quarter on quarter, they have given some huge results, right? Because a lot of the money from safer banks, I mean, the money from smaller banks is going into larger banks. And that's where the hiring for JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley is going up. I would also suggest if you can do an IFRS course, International Financial Reporting Standards, because typically an MBA is always required to have an analysis or something basic knowledge of financial statements. So I would strongly suggest if you can do a IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standard course, or an accounting standard courses, because that will make your case very stronger in front of a chartered accountant and an IM guy. An MBA finance plus a CFA or a CPA, or a combination of MBA finance plus an IFRS would definitely present a good case. And apart from that, I haven't presented any slides for my courses because I am not here for promoting any courses, but it's just that Amir said me that if you can cover some of the careers in finance, and the last 2 minutes I would be talking about, it's more about blockchain, data analytics, and these are the courses which you need to do it. Smaller certifications, don't go for big things and waste your money, 2.5, 3.5 lakhs with upgrade and all sort of stuff. You can go in for a smaller certification like 20,000, 30,000 INR. IFRS courses right now comes up at 15,000, 20,000. So these are small bucking courses, but definitely they gives a very good resume. I would say it gives a strong resume to the recruiters, right? That's all I had from today's presentation. Thank you so much, Amir. Thank you everyone for listening to me patiently. And now I'm open to any doubts, any questions. If you have, you can let me know, guys. And I have given some books for references, which are there. Intelligent Investor for Benjamin Graham, Security Analysis, Value Investing, the Little Book of Value Investing, the Warren Buffett Way. I think Amir can share you that presentation post our session. You can go into. Yes, yes, Amir. I think you can unmute some of them, Amir. If anyone
they have the option to unmute themselves. Yeah. So if anybody has any questions, you guys can go ahead.
Because I want to hear from them actually, because it's all about typing, right? So which source can be, I think, what is that question, Amir? I'm not able to.
Siddhant, can you just unmute and ask the question directly?
Hello, sir. First of all, this was a really informative session and thank you for it. So my question is that being someone from a non-technical background, I did my graduation in BCom. So which source would be suitable for me if I want to learn blockchain development for finance?
I think there are two bodies which are doing up. So we do along with AICPA, which is American Institute of Certified Public Accountancy. So they provide blockchain courses and we are their partners also in India. So we provide the blockchain certification in alliance with them. Or secondary, we have Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. So they also provide a blockchain certification in finance. And both are very less costly, 17,000 to 20,000 pricing. And they cover each and everything. See, fundamentals and what all is there relevant to finance is what they cover. You can also go for a complete blockchain certification from IBM, but that is more on tech background also. So if you're looking much specialized to finance, I would say these are the two bigger bodies who are providing the blockchain certification.
Hi, sir. Thank you for that informational session. Sir, I have an engineering background and I find it pretty difficult to understand the financial markets. So is there any systematic approach towards it so that I could understand it better, sir?
So Anupam, if you have seen Asian Paints, I haven't used, when I was explaining Asian Paints, I went into step by step. First, I spoke about their war, how did the painting business grow. So business is a very important aspect of investing in the market, because I want to know what business they are in and what product they sell, right? And where are they specialized into, right? After the business, I went into the financial. In financial P&L, you only have revenue, you have cost, right? It is all about revenue and cost. Revenue is what for Asian Paints. They have their two major product segments and what are their revenue drivers. That is what you need to know from a tech background, that what is driving revenue for Asian Paints. One is their decorative business, I mean the decorative paints, and one is the industrial paints. So that is what is driving their revenues quarter on quarter. And second, in that P&L, you can also see the cost. What is that? Is the cost is going down because of the crude oil. Crude oil have corrected because raw material. So whenever if you're going for a finance interview, normally they ask what is a major cost for that company. For an Asian Paints, what is their major cost? Their major cost is their raw materials, right? 50% of your raw material consists of the 50% of their expenditure is raw material, and major raw material input is crude, right? And they have also have DO2 or something, one more component. So crude oil is a very important factor in that particular time. So that's how you analyze their PNL. And then you go into their cash flow. Their cash flow from operating activities is very huge. So normally these are 3-4 factors which I see when I'm investing. I see that what is their cash flow from operating. It cannot be that from their financing they are driving the cash. It's their core activities should drive more operating cash flows, right? And second is the distribution network. I mean, they are present everywhere. And tell me which business, always a business will have manufacturer, wholesaler and retailer. In Asian Paints, they don't have anything. They are directly selling it through their vast distribution networks. So don't you think so, Anupam, here I am talking more about business, less about financials. Yes, financial can be a very big factor, but for me as an investor, I will look first thing is their management and their business. Once I understand what is the painting business, what are they into? Are they into rural areas? Are they into what is the value driving for me? Once I understand that, then I look up to their financials. And financials, you can understand very easily if you correlate it with the business. Like I have explained you revenue and I've explained you cost. And that's where I was talking about IFRS. If you want to see how they present it in the balance sheet, then you can do a course on international financial reporting standards, how they present their revenue, how do they recognize their revenue, because we are not expecting you to be chartered accountants, right? Because you're a tech guy. So at least you have some basics like a finance for non-finance course kind of stuff where you can just understand the basics of finance also. I think right now you are the most in-demand resource because right now all the finance guys are expected to have tech knowledge. And now you're from tech background. If you have a finance knowledge, I think you're the hot person in the market currently.
Thank you, sir.
I think Amir Roma has one question. I don't think so. I'm able to see that.
Just one second. She's asking, what courses would you suggest a fresher interested in finance to compete with people having work experience?
I think I know a lot of the IMs, most of them have good work experience and they're the first ones who get placed very easily, right? So even an ISB for that matter, a lot of them are having huge work experiences of 5 years, 4 years, and then it becomes very challenging for a fresher who is there and interested in finance to compete with them. I think the first thing what you can have is a very important tech knowledge. If you are having just as a finance thing, get those very important tech certification. People who are having work experience need not be they are updated or upgraded with all those things. So better, I would suggest a very strong tech certification. Roma would definitely help you. Like as I was telling, blockchain, and just learn the application aspect of RPA, robotic process automations. These are being used a lot by finance companies, right? I mean, the companies which are there and which are hiring the people in finance. So they are looking for people who are having good knowledge on robotics, RPA, data analytics. RPA data analytics are, I would say, very bigger than blockchain itself. So that are two things which you can get into in order to compete with a high work experience because they are not getting good data analytics guy. That's what I was telling to Anupam. Finance plus tech, I think that's the biggest beneficiary, and that could make you compete with the people having work experience, because typically people who have good work experience, they tend to be complacent. They think that they already know all this sort of stuff, so they don't try to upgrade. I mean, not offending anyone here who's having the experience and all, but just that as in that they are very complacent, they don't want to do any further courses. But you as a fresher can definitely do some of the courses and then compete with them, and then can challenge that company that you are updated with what is going on. And your business knowledge again would definitely help, Roma. I hope that clarifies your question.
Sir,
yeah.
If someone wants to learn more about intraday trading, what would you suggest? What sort of videos or courses to refer to?
So intraday trading, I would say, is a habit like casino. I used to go when I went to US. I remember almost 5 years back to pursue my US CPA qualification there because the exam was there that time in US. So when I went to that casino, so my brother was there with me in that casino, and I was completely playing there and all. And my brother had to fight with me to take me out from there. So when you are into intraday trading and all, you need to have a one person with you who can stop you, because that is like an addiction. So once you go into that trading, because I would say in intraday trading, 90% people don't book profits. And people having high ego also cannot perform in stock market. If they tell, how can I get losses, right? If they have such kind of ego, they will book more losses in intraday. Because if you have losses, that's why there is a concept of stop loss in stock market. Why do they have that stop losses? Because when you are in intraday trading, it is assumed that you will make a loss. Understand that you have lost your money. That's how you must start your intraday trading, right? But again, I would tell you from my experience and what I've seen from the people who have good information, good quarterly information, insider information, they are the ones who outperform in insider trading. Just imagine, Siddhant, if you have coronavirus coming up and you're doing an intraday trading, you have short sold, you have bought Infosys and on a intra buy, right? And
Yes.
suddenly there's some news comes up and the share goes down like anything. So that's what happened, and your stop loss is triggered because you are trading with a margin. So that's where I think I would suggest not to go into, but still, if you have asked me intraday trading, ICICI Direct is a very good account where you can learn all these things. And there is a intraday trading, an entire presentation is also there in ICICI Direct. You will need to again first register with them and get into things. Again, I'm not marketing any brokerage things here because so it's just that what I felt. I think intraday trading and Zerodha also, you can go into their technical calls daily and you can practice a lot. Zerodha actually doesn't charge brokerage at all. So
Yes.
they have intraday, I don't think so. They have a brokerage on futures and option. They have 25 rupees. I think that's how I know, because I don't have an account in Zerodha, so can't comment much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's about it. We can end this session now. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your time. We got to learn a lot about value investing, growth investing, and other aspects of the stock market in general. Thank you so much for
Amir. It
providing
was
this guidance.
I mean, it was an absolute pleasure interacting with the professionals here and the students. And it's always a good thing to talk at times, right? So I'm a little disappointed that I couldn't go. Like I went to Rohtak and Sirmaur to their campuses, because the beauty of IIMS is their campuses, right? They have the beautiful campuses. But nevertheless, I hope that people enjoyed the session and I could do justice to the session. Thank you so much, Amir, for inviting. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.